Here we go. The turning of the page, okay? Turning of the page on the drama. We will turn the page on the drama. Now, time to dive into the Eagles versus Steelers game. Johnny Mac, Steelers, first in the AFC North. They're 10-3. I believe they've won 6 of their last 7 games. Philadelphia Eagles are 11-2, 9 straight wins, both first in their division. Eagles obviously first in the NFC East. A big 425 matchup. Before we dive into some of the specific things from afar, how you seeing this game, John? What sticks out to you as keys to the game coming into this Sunday?
Well, I do think the Steelers are kind of limited offensively, and that's with George Pickens, and it looks like he's doubtful, so I'm not sure if he's going to be able to play. So you know, I don't think they're very explosive offensively. So I think that sort of trends well for the Eagles, who are obviously playing tremendous when it comes to the defensive side of the football. Defensively, though, man, they are loaded and they were playing at a high level. And it starts with TJ Watt, but there's so much more than just TJ Watt. And, up front, they got good line. They seem to always have good linebackers. But Cameron Hayward is, you know, I don't know. He's got to be 35 years old,
Yeah, I
but
think
he's
he's
still,
36, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, he's up there. He just he's
35. Yep,
he,
35.
he's an amazing player. Nate Herbig's brother, Nick Herbig, is an amazing player as a pass rusher. Alex Highsmith is amazing. They have 3 really good pass rushers when we talk about the Eagles, and now they got Preston Smith. So, and we have that's to compliment T.J. Watt. They have the best pass rush in the NFL. That it is relentless. Um, they have the best front 7 in the NFL. And then Minka Fitzpatrick is really special at safety. Um, Joey Porter Jr. is talented, but not having a great season. So probably
Right.
their
Taking a
weakness,
lot of penalties, Joey Porter.
yeah, probably their weakness is their corners, their lone weakness. But right, are the Eagles prepared to take advantage of that? Not the Eagles recently. Everything else, Peyton Wilson is a guy, injuries and draft and all that stuff. Back when we were talking about what are the Eagles doing at linebacker, I thought that
Right.
was a guy that would fit.
Right.
Because Patrick Queen has the big name, um, coming over from Baltimore, which is interesting because of their rivalry. They're just loaded. They're loaded in the front 7. Best front 7 in football.
Going to be an interesting matchup with those guys coming in. John, how the hell do you block TJ Watt? And does he mainly line up on that side where Lane Johnson will be, or do they move him around a lot?
They move him around a little bit, but they don't move him around a lot. And it's one of those situations where if he, feels something, or they'll let him move because he's so gifted. But it'll be mainly Lane. And the Eagles are better equipped to handle that type of player
Right.
than anybody else. But he's one that they always say it about Micah Parsons. If you can't block him, read him. That, I think, is what they'll try to do with the run game. But yeah, he's we. I think that term game record gets thrown around a little bit too easily, but not for him. He's one of those guys that can absolutely wreck a game. Absolutely wreck a game. Um, and like I said, they got 3 other big time pass rushers on the outside. I'm not even talking about Hayward, who's phenomenal inside. But Highsmith is back. I mentioned Herbig, um, and to go along, and they traded for Preston Smith, who's been a good pass rusher in Green Bay for years. Um, So it's a really strong group as far as the front seven goes.
Yeah, that's about as interesting as of a matchup as you will get. You got the Eagles offensive line, probably the best in football, top 2, top 3 in football, up against TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, and Preston Smith. John, turn on the TV. Well, you'll be at the game, but turn on the TV and watch a battle in the trenches. That's good old school.
Yeah, and like I
football
said,
right there.
Hayward's was still one of the best interior defensive
exactly.
linemen. And they even got a young kid, Benton, who's really good, and they've gotten him going. So they're about more than just their edge rushers. I mean, they're good on the interior too. But I think the good news is this is not a team that's going to be explosive offensively. So I think that limits their ceiling a little bit, but defensively, I take them right up with anybody. I think them and the Eagles are in the conversation for being. I'll take that defense, and I'll take the Eagles defense. But I do give. I think people know by now. I'm a big Banjo fan. I think they have more talent than the Eagles defense. But yeah, it's really gifted group.
Yeah, Vic has the Eagles obviously playing above what we were expecting on them. There is a lot of talent on that Pittsburgh game. John, is it fair to say Jalen Hurts gonna have to play this game a little different? You just talked about that front seven for Pittsburgh. They're going to be coming all day long. And here's a stat from Denise Selman, who joins PHLY. He puts this out. Jalen Hurts' 2024 average time to throw, 3.05 seconds, is the longest of his career and third longest of any quarterback in the last 4 years. The only two who were longer were 2023 Justin Fields and 2022 Justin Fields.
Yeah,
so you don't want to be holding the ball. John, you don't want to be holding the ball when you got TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Highsmith, and Preston Smith running at you, my friend. You don't want to be holding on to the football.
Yeah, Brandon BLG and I have been talking about this since training camp.
Yes, you have.
Now those time to throw stats, like I don't know where Denise is getting his, and how do you pronounce his name? It's very.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't. I assume.
I don't want it, Dennis. I think it's Dennis. So
it might be Dennis.
Yeah,
I said Denise.
Yeah, so I said even worse. I think I said Denise, but I think it's Dennis. But anyway, they're kind of hinky. I don't know. Like I use next gen stats, so everybody's got different. Now with next gen stats, Jalen is second to Lamar Jackson, and there's a reason guys like that are at the top because they hold up. That's part of their game.
Right.
So it's not necessarily bad if you're making plays on the back end, which sometimes Jalen does, but recently, from a larger standpoint, has not been. So they have him at 3.12, even worse than that number, but he's second. And then, third is Sam Darnold, traditional play action quarterback. Fourth is Justin Fields. Fifth is Brock Purdy, traditional play action quarterback. So those play action guys are going to take longer because they have long developing routes. But that's the way the offense is designed. Then you have the dual threat guys like Lamar and Jalen and Justin Fields, and you have to look at them. In the case of Justin Fields, he just does not process well. In the case of Jalen Hurts, he just does not process well this season. We always go back, Brandon and I always go back to the Super Bowl season. The number was 2.78.
Right.
That's an eternity from 2.78 to 3.12. If he can get back down, play the rest of the season at 2.78, and he's making quicker, sharper decisions, I think the Eagles get much, much better. But I do think that's an important stat. He holds on to, you saw it. Anybody who's watching social media or likes film people, everybody had their take out this week. in every single one of them, the ball's not coming out. I've been talking about it since week 1 in Green Bay. All the turnovers, late throws, ball's not coming out on time. For whatever reason, he is not comfortable right now.
That's going to be important this week, too. The Pittsburgh Steelers, we just talked about their front seven, a beastie group. And now you got they're also the number 4 run defense in the NFL, allowing just 91.5 yards a game. You just mentioned also their weaknesses, their corners. I mean, if this sounds like a game where you want to get that ball out and get the ball to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I don't know if
it might be counterintuitive, but it might help playing Pittsburgh because you can't mess around with Pittsburgh. Like you probably go into that Carolina game, whether it's subconscious or not, and say, well, we always talk about human nature. Human nature plays into it. With Pittsburgh, you're going to be hyper alert to, if I hold on to this football, bad things are going to happen. So in a counterintuitive way, this might be exactly what this team needs right now when it comes to that. When it comes to, all right, no more messing around. This defense will eat us alive if we're not getting the football out on time.
Good matchup with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, too, going up against Joey Porter Jr. and Dante Jackson. That seems to be the mismatch when you look at this Eagles offense versus Steelers defense. They're great against the run. I mentioned 4th in the league, and that pass rush is just vicious. So, how big of a matchup is that? A.J. Brown going up against Joey Porter Jr. and Dante Jackson.
It seems like we talk about this every week. It should be big. It should be a big advantage. But if you don't throw the football, it can't be a big advantage. I mean, will he catch 4 of his targets? All 4 of his targets? Probably.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say A.J. Brown's going to have more than 4 targets this week.
Hopefully. And it's about more than AJ as well. Devontae, I mean, even more so, is not getting the football. Nobody's getting the football consistently. And that's because they throw it 20, 21 times a game. And if you're throwing it that little, it's about, well, you got to be effective in those number of throws. And at times the Eagles have been. Lately, they have not been. So it's kind of where you are with the receivers.
Looking at this Steelers passing game, John, you mentioned it's kind of pedestrian, and I'll add in this. Mike Tomlin said George Pickens is doubtful to play the game. So you take out George Pickens. The Eagles, by the way, lead the league right now in running percentage at 56.5%. The number 2 team in the league is the Pittsburgh Steelers at 51.6%. Now they're without their top wide receiver, which means their top receiver in this game is going to be Pat Freiermuth, who leads the team outside of Pickens, who's their tight end.
Could be a very good player.
They could be relying on that running back, Najee Harris, this week, John. They might run the ball 30 times versus Eagles defense.
Yeah, and Freiermuth is a very good player. But anytime you have a tight end as your best receiver, defenses love that because they're not going to be explosive. You're not getting explosive plays down the field. But he's a very good player. And then they fall off pretty dramatically. Najee Harris is also their 3rd leading receiver. So, and Harris is a good running back, but he's not explosive. He's under 4 yards a carry. More of a move the chains type guy like Chuba Hubbard. So it becomes, all right, 5, 6, 7 at a time versus Saquon hitting home runs. So you don't have to worry about the home run really. Very limited offensively, I would describe them as. And especially limited without George Pickens, who's their one deep threat. Not that, and by the way, not that he's like, you're not going to be frightened of this offense when he's on the field. But
but he does change up their offensive plan a little bit. He averages.
But he's not AJ Brown, is what.
No.
Yeah, So,
don't think
I
anybody's
mean,
A.J. Brown except Jamar Chase and maybe Justin Jefferson. But yeah, he averages 15.5 yards per catch now. So it does allow your offense to play a little bit differently when you have a receiver that does that.
yeah. Well, they're much better when he's out there, but I'm saying even when he is out there, they're not exactly explosive as an offense.
Right.
It's just the way they play. And Russell, one of the questions, he hurt his calf early, and Justin Fields was winning some games, and people were, kind of shocked when they went to Russell Wilson. I'm like, you shouldn't be shocked. I mean, he's a tremendous upgrade over Justin Fields,
Yeah.
but he's not the same player he once was. But again, 5-0, 9 touchdowns. I think 1 interception against the Eagles all time. Yeah. But maybe it's that type of season. Never won in Cincinnati, won in Cincinnati. Never won in Baltimore, won in Baltimore. Never beat Russell Wilson. Maybe they beat Russell Wilson.
Looking at this Steelers offensive line, John, with the Eagles pass rush, how do you see it? Their right side is a little weaker. They had 2 injuries there at their right guard and right tackle, which means Mason McCormick will be their starting right guard and Broderick Jones will be their starting right tackle. They had Troy Fatanu, who was their first round pick this year. He got injured in week 1. And then they had James Daniels, and he got injured with an Achilles tear. So his season is done. Now they're 2 backups on the right side of that offensive line. The left side's pretty good. They got an old friend, Isaac. Yeah, left guard, and Dan Moore Jr. at left tackle, and then a rookie, Zach Frazier, in at center.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Frazier's, playing really well, by the way, as a rookie.
He was a second rounder, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was second round.
Yeah.
And an offensive line, first 2 rounds this year.
Yeah. And by the way, I think the Eagles would have taken Fatano at 22. And you never know what happens. But also Nate Herbig is there. Not only Nick, our old buddy Nate Herbig is there, but he doesn't play. Andy Waddle's there. Should mention, give a shout out.
Nate and Nick are there? Both Herbig brothers.
Nate, both Herbig brothers are there. But obviously
they got the Hayward brothers too. They like a brother combo over there in Pittsburgh.
And Andy Waddle, Andy Waddle's their assistant GM. Shout out to him. And he builds like the Eagles build. And that's why I think you saw almost a shadow draft, because the Steelers were right ahead of the Eagles. You could almost predict, well, what the Eagles were thinking by what Andy was thinking. And he's a very good personnel guy. But yeah, you mentioned those 2 names. James Daniels maybe is their best offensive lineman when he's healthy. And if he were healthy, you have Daniels with Sayamalo, and Frazier and Patano. And, then you can kind of choose Broderick Jones or Dan Moore, whichever. Then you're really cooking with gas. But yeah, they got 2 injuries with probably their 2 most talented offensive linemen. And that's saying something, because Isaac's pretty good. And Zach Frazier's pretty good. But, they don't have those guys. They don't have Daniels. They don't have Patano. So not as strong as it would be, but some good solid players there. But not nearly what the Eagles are yet.
It should be interesting. Yeah, I think Jalen Carter is going to be leaning to that left side a little bit between Frazier and McCormick. See if he can pick on those 2 players and get some pressure up the middle for Jalen Carter. So good stuff there. John, last thing I want to hit on, and then we will dive into hour number 2. All Super Chats will go to the front, and we'll have a little bit of a Q&A. If you guys want to ask Johnny Mac anything, we will take all Super Chats, and we appreciate everybody watching this morning. Don't forget to hit that like button, guys. We've been crushing it on Birds 365 on the likes in the last couple of weeks. And that's all because of you guys. So big thanks to you guys for doing that. Over 500 on YouTube right now. So smash that like button. Let's get to at least 150 to 200 if we can before the show is out. Johnny Mac, last thing I want to talk about here before we get to our break. Special teams. And I didn't think I'd go down this route, but you got to when you have a kicker that's struggling the way that Jake Elliott is. And on the flip side, Braden Mann's been a pretty damn good punter for the
Braden
Eagles
Mann's been
this year.
tremendous.
Yeah. How much of an impact could special teams play in this game, in your opinion?
Well, Chris Boswell's the most accurate kicker of all time. So, typically last year, Boswell's the underrated part of the group. He's been so good for so long. But last year, Jake was such a good kicker, but he's not this year. So right now, I think you got a lot more confidence in Chris Boswell than you do in Jake Elliott, or you should, because that guy is nails. I think he's 30. I'm trying to say 36 of 39 on field goals this year. And the 50-plus stuff, he's 11 of 13.
Yeah, and in the last 2 years, he's 17 of 20 from 50-plus. So he's hitting at a high rate right now.
Yeah. And think about 21 to 23. Jake was 17 of 19 from 50-plus. So that's how good he was. But now he's 0 for 5. So obviously it's a little bit of a mental thing with Jake Elliott right now. He's lost his stroke. So you have to give them the big advantage when it comes to kicker. But yeah, Braden Mann's been great. I'm not sure how much people see, but like I said about that the Eagles perfectly executed being what they aren't. And that's at the end of the Carolina game by being non-aggressive because they didn't trust the kicker. And then Braden Mann did a great job and Avonte Maddox did a great job executing the punt. But again, and I think BLG described it best, and maybe it was Jimmy Kempsky described it best, was there were 3 options there. And the only one that guaranteed Carolina had a chance to win the game was the option the Eagles chose. And they don't do that. And they did it because they don't trust their kicker right now. And that, to me, we've talked about it a little bit, but we haven't talked about it a lot because of the nonsense off the field. That, to me, is an issue as well. So you got to trust your kicker. And they have been for many years, and all of a sudden they aren't trusting it.
John, have you learned anything or any inside information you can share as to why you think Jake Elliott might have taken? I mean, maybe not, but like Twiz asked a good question. John, is Jake affected by not being involved on kickoffs? It is odd to now use Braden Mann on kickoffs. Like, is there anything there that you've read or talked to Jake about maybe that could indicate why he might have slipped this year? Anything or no?
Well, Jake, yeah, we talked to Jake a bunch. I mean, he talked again yesterday. He's a very process-driven guy. He says the same thing every time. It doesn't change. Whether he makes it, misses it, he keeps the same process every single time. He said he feels good hitting the ball. Said he's not a stats guy, to my personal love. Says he never looks at him, just tries to keep it kick by kick. So he's a very, as I said, process-driven guy. But, and it served him well, but it's not serving him well right now. So I asked Michael Clay about that. We've asked Michael a lot. We've asked him about the kickoff thing. I mean, Braden's better at it, basically. That's why he does it. And also the Eagles sport down aggressiveness. We asked Michael Clay about that as well, because he doesn't get many opportunities at times. Right. If that affects him, I guess a little bit, but this has been going on for years. And the guy is just, sometimes with kickers it's a very mental position, and it gets in your head. It's like a slump in baseball, slump in golf. Golf is the best because you have the stroke. Guys lose their stroke for whatever reason.
I think golf is a great example because I think there's precision to kicking. Like I would like to think, and I don't know this, I'm not an NFL kicker and I've never really talked to one about what it's like, but I would like to think that when they miss right, you know exactly why you missed right. Like if you golf, for anybody that golfs, when you miss a shot, most of the time, you know what you did. You picked your head up, you hit it off the toe, you hit it off the heel. I think there's a little bit of that when it comes to NFL kicking too. It's a precision thing, and if it's not doesn't hit the foot perfect, it's not going to go where you want it to go.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same stroke every time. When you're doing it right and when you're not, certain things go wrong. Michael mentioned, there was an issue last game with the operation. Wouldn't say what it was. Could be the snap, could be the hold. I think people really, really don't see that. Most NFL kicks, makeable NFL kicks, most with good kickers, it's always the hold or the snap. Almost always. Almost always. So even if that's off a little bit, if it's a high snap and you get it down late, if it's a little bit of a bobble, if he doesn't get the laces around, all that kind of stuff, Ray Finkel, yada yada. Yeah, the operation part of it doesn't get looked at. There was a famous missed field goal in the playoffs with Blair Walsh, who, it's like a 27 against Russell Wilson, the Seahawks, against I think it was 27-yard missed kick. Game over, would have won the game, missed it. And it was a bad weather game in Minnesota. It was snowing. It was negative. It's January in Minnesota. They were outside because it was the time in between the Metrodome and US Bank Stadium. They were playing outside at the University of Minnesota. So it was a cold weather game. And everybody's making all these excuses and, bad hold, bad snap, blah, blah, blah. And Blair Wall said, if it were put down like a watermelon, I should be able to make a 27-yard kick. So to his credit, he took full responsibility for the missed kick, but he was never the same. He was an all-pro kicker, missed that kick. It was out of the league in a couple years. Very mental position. And when you start going in a negative direction, it can get negative real quickly.
Yeah, can unravel a little bit. Hopefully that doesn't happen with Jake Elliott, who's had a bad year this year. Lauren Crampsey checks in. Mac, has Jake been on an injury report at all this season? Agree completely regarding the mental aspect, and they are often not really culturally part of the team. That's an interesting perspective there, Lauren. John, has any response to Lauren there?
Yeah, it can be. I mean, specialists are always off the side, but Jake is very popular in the locker room, so that's not the case. I always joke he's great at everything: ping pong, golf, softball, anything with hand-eye coordination. He does trick golf shots. You can see he puts on his Instagram or whatever at times. He's very popular amongst the team, so that can be a thing with specialists, but not in this case. As far as injury, no, he's not been injured. He had a bad year in 2020. People forget Doug Peterson's last year, and he bounced right back. And that's the hope here. Sometimes, like again, you miss one kick, and as mentally strong as you try to be, and as many times as you've done it, it's a lot of pressure, man. A lot of pressure in that job. No doubt. Then when you start, all your chances are, from 52. Like it would have been 52 and 54 if they let him try it. And then there's extra points where you can get a feel. And he missed an extra point, but that was about being offsides. And the Eagles went for the 2-point conversion. That I wouldn't be concerned about that one. But I do think there is something to that rhythm part of it, and maybe they should let him kick off. I think there's something to that.
Keep the damn leg loose. Is it that worth it for Braden Mann because he's 5% better at it?
Well, I think they saw it. He's a little bit better at it, and I think they saw it as let's try to save Jake's leg a little bit, and maybe it's had the opposite effect.
I don't know, but I don't think we need to be preserving legs, but hey, maybe I'm wrong about that. Lauren, appreciate your super chat. And yeah, we did cover AJ. We did cover all that stuff at the open of the show today. So for those who are just checking in, if you want to see and hear about the final touches on the drama and what went on in the locker room yesterday.
Hopefully, final touches.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
hopefully we'll see how it develops this year. Now, when we come back, I got a stat. All right, I got some not stats. I got some numbers I want to run by John McMullen. I want to see what he thinks of this. What I was looking at yesterday, and is Kellen Moore. Does Kellen Moore need to be in the bullseye a little bit more when it comes to this passing game? We will see about that. So when we return, we'll do that, and then we'll take all super chats as well. Get a Q&A for Johnny Mack here as we prep for this Eagles-Steelers Week 15. Week 15, everybody. What are there? 18 weeks, John, in the year? We're at Week 15.
Yeah, it goes quick.
Oh.
It goes quick.
I'm almost sad a little bit already. I'm almost sad that we're in the.
Well, you might have if they go where they want to go, you're going to have some extra week. And
that's true. But I mean, just in general, football, like nothing is better for me, John, than on Mondays and Thursdays is like you get off a long day of work and then I just sit down and like, all right, I can watch some football. Like I love that. When football's gone, I don't watch shit on TV.
Well, that part's true. No games. But I got to tell you, the offseason, in a lot of ways, is more fun for me than the regular season. There's much more interesting things going on in the off. That's what kind of fuels football's popularity.
Yeah, we do great in the offseason, man. We got a great loyal fan base who watches us all through the offseason. So if you're watching now,
you got free agency, you got
free agency, it's all fun, man. There's a lot of speculation. It's cool. It's a lot of fun to cover the offseason. Last season was my first offseason. I didn't pick it up till after the draft. So it'll be cool for me to do this year before the draft and be on the air. Last year I started up for
edge rusher.
Yeah, right.
Well, we
edge rusher. That's it. Let's just start scouting edges. I know Gaz in the chat has been looking at some.
We got plenty of time for the draft though, and free agency. You know, a lot of people are worried about contracts, Zach Bond's contract. Plenty of time for that. Run it, Joy. You know, that's been a theme as the Eagles this week. 10-1 last year. You know, the famous most miserable 10-1 team in history. You know, Nick has mentioned, you know, take joy in the wins. Michael Clay mentioned it. Joy, joy, joy. Boy, this team, they've been so good for so long now. It's like, you know, it's absurd the amount of wins they've had over the past 3 years. And they just ain't happy unless it's wins plus style points.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's get to our break here. Antoine says, Zander not watching TV is obvious. He didn't know what Sonic was. That is correct. And although this is the new thing I've been enjoying very much so, Antoine, is I'm subscribed to the NFL Plus, and NFL Films, they do a really good job, and they have so much content on there. So I've been enjoying a bunch of NFL film stuff, watching some history of the game. It's a lot of fun, and I enjoy doing that. And this is my guy here, Hassan. John, I talked to Hassan on our roundtable the other day from Alabama. So I talked to Hassan last night. You'll be pleased to know, Hassan, I watched the NFL Films show. It's called A Football Life, and they do a segment. They have a bunch of episodes, 11 seasons on different people. And I watched the Nick Saban episode last night, and they went deep into when he benched Jalen for Tua. And Nick, you know, spoke about, listen, this was not a whim decision. This was premeditated of the Georgia has a great front seven. If Jalen can't run the ball effectively, we got to be able to throw the ball well to win this game.
We're still talking about it.
Listen, it was good. It was cool to see that last night. I enjoyed that. Hassan, go check that episode out. I know you're a big Bama football fan. That is a great episode on Nick.
Sorry, guys, but I'm happy Bama's not in the party. Sorry.
Yeah, I know Johnny Mack is, but Nick Saban's a fucking legend, Joe.
Oh, I agree with that.
Yeah. Bill Belichick called him in the show the greatest football mind he's ever been around. He respects nobody more, he said, than Nick Saban. Pretty cool.
Yeah, well, they're good friends. I mean, Nick was, you know, that's where Nick got his start. So
yeah, Cleveland, yep.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, we'll get to our break. Like I said, I got this topic coming up, and we'll see what Johnny Mack thinks of it. Is Kellen Moore the issue? We will talk about that next on Birds 365. Let me tell you first about BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. They have the fastest payouts in the industry. 24/7 customer support, and you even get your own custom account manager. And when you sign up, you use this promo code. It's YouTube150. It gives you a 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit, and then you get 125% on your second and third deposit. So great stuff from BetUS, all up to $2,000. Deposit less and bet with more at BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. We'll be back in 3 minutes, everybody, on Birds 365.